The Australian outback. Not a place for the faint-hearted, not a place you ever want to break down. When Jillaroo Jess heads to her next job, it could be thousands of kilometres away, and her ute has to be up to the task. So when Alan and Andrew Gray cross paths with her during a trip to the Pilbara, they insist on making sure it's terrain Tamer strong. Hours in the humidity, lots of parts installed, and Alan exhausted from telling everyone what to do.
You finished yet?
Will Jess's ute be out back ready?
Testing the revs with all three of us in the car, it was like sardines in a sardine can.
I swear everything gets easier if you make grunting noises.
Yeah, well,
Trying to squeeze yourself into a sardine can.
Sympathy grunt.
Age and maturity don't necessarily go hand in hand, Al.
We are now doing 110 Ks at 2,500 revs per minute, which is beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so we'll turn back now because there's no McDonald's up ahead. And we've got a lot of work to do.
We eventually drove into town to Hunter Mechanical, just because they have a hoist and it makes it so much easier to be able to get underneath of the car.
Well, guys, it's going to be a big day today. We fitted this ECU, and we're going to fit a fortified clutch in the vehicle to.
That'll be good, because I noticed on the way here that it was slipping even in top gear.
Yeah, that might be the driver.
Put this in, then I can give it a real test run.
Definitely illustrates the point why you need a fortified clutch with this ECU.
So we also got while we got it out, we got this gearbox with the extra high ratio in fifth gear, which will be better for economy and peace of mind as you're going down the highway.
Yeah,
on the
good.
trips you're doing, that will be brilliant. Right, let's get into it.
Better make yourself useful. Can you go grab a tin of WD-40?
What, put it under your arms? Right, I'll get going. I'll be back. You better be working by the time I get back. We're pulling the tail shafts off. There we go, on the ground. There, here it comes out.
It takes us a few hours of pulling off parts before we can even get to the gearbox. It's gone pretty smoothly for us, but on some vehicles you'll come across a bent bracket or a rusty bolt, and that can add a lot more time to the process.
So we're trying to get the transfer case out, Jess. This is the transfer case which actually drives to the front axle and has a two-speed system in it. Gearbox is back up in there and the clutch is further up. It's very heavy. There's no way in the world you would lift a lot out, so we're going to split it.
Oh, yeah, we have made a bit of progress, haven't we?
Yeah, I can see
we're
a
cooking
gap
with
there.
gas. Yeah.
Once the transfer case is out, we drain the gear oil. Then it's time to attack the gearbox. This one's going to be heavy, and we can't afford to make any mistakes.
I'm going to come down, watch your fingers.
We'll have to watch which one it is.
All right, once we whip this flywheel off, we'll send him down to the machine shop and they'll resurface it ready for the new clutch.
I probably got the most out of pulling the gearbox apart. It's really interesting to see how it all works.
While the flywheel is being machined down the road, I thought I'd talk Jess through the new clutch we're installing.
So this is the new Fortified clutch, so it won't slip like the old one did. So what we've got here, we've got ceramic one side and fibre the other. Now, the reason why they've done this is it's got a very high drag friction coefficient. Brass button clutches are great, but they tend to chatter by nature, so they're not very drivable. They're kind of either on or off. So having the fibre material one side and the ceramic the other kind of gives you the best of both worlds, and it's quite a clever design because they've done quite a few things to give you a higher clamping force, better drive, but the same sort of pedal pressure. So they've also made some changes to the diaphragm spring to give it more clamping force as well. And this is also an SG cast iron pressure plate, which is a very high quality type of cast iron. So
This might sound like a silly question, but what's the difference between heavy duty and what the clutch I've got in now?
So to start with, you've got very strong torsional damper springs. So this is what absorbs the shock loading when you start letting your foot off the clutch.
So the ones in my old one will be a bit thinner than that?
Be a bit lighter, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Another thing that helps make it a heavy duty clutch is you have more drive straps. So these drive straps here are what transmit the torque. So this bolts to your flywheel, which is obviously being turned by the engine. And this clamps the clutch plate to the flywheel. So, and your input shaft on the gearbox goes up the middle. So these bits here are what actually transmit that whole driving force. So all that power goes through these set of straps here. The main advantage is it's a lot stronger and it's a lot less prone to cracking. So if it does happen to slip and the temperatures get very, very high, it won't fly to bits.
This thing's now turning out 780 metres of torque, so we had to put the standard clutch will only handle about 500, if that 480. This one will handle 900 metres of torque.
This is also our design, made in Japan using our tooling. You won't find it anywhere else.
The clutch kind of works in the opposite way to what you think it would. I mean, the pressure on it is what makes it release.
So is the clutch normally spins and then when you put your foot in, it stops it?
So when you put your foot on the clutch, it pushes in this big diaphragm spring at the back, and there's like a little fulcrum in there, the lever. So when you push that in, it actually pulls that back, okay? Allowing the clutch plate to free rotate inside. And then when you take your foot off the clutch.
Before we install the new gearbox, Al fits a new clutch release bearing, making sure to grease the clutch fork pivot at the same time.
So this is our new Pride and Joy. This is the special gearbox we've had done with the insides with a special high ratio. And you'll really appreciate it for quietness down the highway, better fuel economy, and a much better feel. And Tamer own the tooling for this, and the only people in the world that's got it. All the other gears will be the same, but when you get a fifth gear, you'll actually, instead of be doing 2,500 revs at, say, at legal speed, 110, you'll be dropping down to about 2,000 revs.
Yeah, good. That's exactly what I want. I do so much highway work, so when you're doing 110 down the highway, it's noisy and it just chews through fuel.
The flywheel's back from being resurfaced and is as good as new.
We've got to be very careful here, folks, that we don't bend that clutch plate.
Clutch plates are quite easy to distort during installation, and you won't realise it's happened until you're driving the car. It's vital that the gearbox stays parallel the whole time and doesn't hang off the clutch plate while the gearbox is being installed. This gearbox stand is essential. Often the transfer case will be put up as an assembly with the gearbox, but in this instance we've separated them for ease of installation. Then it's time for everything else to go back up.
You gotta grab that step ladder, Jess. All right.
And then finally, it's time to go for another test run. Let's see what a difference this new gearbox and clutch make.
Fourth gear, coming up. Oh, wowie.
Oh, I feel that.
Thrown into the back seat.
I'm loving this ECU. Hold on to your false teeth, Al.
They're on the ground.
You'll swallow them if you move it too hard.
Fifth gear.
Sitting at 1900 at 100 k's.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we want 110.
Yeah, look at that. It's about 2,100 at 110.
Too far,
Yeah, that's
so
good.
dropped to 400.
It's really good.
We're at 110 kilometres an hour, and we're showing 2,100 revs. So that's 500, 400 revs better than we were before.
Significant improvement.
Wow.
And the
A lot
sound,
quieter in the cabin.
sound is a lot quieter, even with Jess here and Andrew talking to me.
1, 2, 3.
I've noticed that Alan and Andrew have very different styles of working on cars. So what exactly does a steering dampener do?
There's a whole lot of experts here, and they're just making up mind whether this is terribly poisonous or it happens to be a harmless fiver.
Yeah, it looks like it wants to eat you though.